young John-min goes online to find out the easiest way to end his life. Suddenly, an ad for an elite taxi service with the slogan, "Don't die, take revenge, we will help you," pops up on the screen. He cries but hesitates to call, convinced it's a scam. The next day, John-min goes to school with a broken leg. However, upon seeing the bullies who constantly harass him, he trembles with fear, turns around, and leaves. He then goes to the fish shop where his deaf and mute mother works. Realizing that his mother can't help him, John-min feels even more hopeless. At home, he finally decides to call the elite taxi service. The call is answered by the company director, Sun Chol, who immediately dispatches a driver. John-min gets in the taxi, and the driver, Do-gi, steps on the gas and says they're going to get revenge. John-min starts telling his tearful story. A few months ago, John-min transferred to a new school. During recess, 3 bullies approached him, angry about the strong smell of fish coming from the new kid. John-min explained that his mother works at a fish shop, but this only made the bullies angrier. They force the boy to go with them to karaoke, where they bully him and take all his money. When he asks for help, the school teacher also cringes at the fish smell and advises John-min to befriend the bullies. When the nerd runs out of money, one of the bullies angrily pushes him onto the road, and another ruthlessly runs over his leg with a moped to make it look like an accident. The bullies end up getting compensation from the insurance company for John-min's broken leg. Completely disheartened, John-min goes to the police, but the officer just brushes him off, saying it's a matter for the school's anti-bullying committee. Returning home, John-min is horrified to see the bullies having dinner with his mother. The thugs threaten to kill his mother if he tells anyone about what's happening. So, John-min lies to the school principal, saying he broke his leg falling down the stairs. His mother senses something is wrong, but he insists on his story, allowing the bullies to get away with it once again. In the present, the driver hands John-min an envelope and drops him off near an arcade. Approaching the designated machine, he receives instructions on paying for the elite taxi service and a request for final confirmation to take revenge on the bullies. Remembering how cruelly they treated him, John-min resolutely presses yes. The taxi service starts its own investigation into the matter and gathers all the necessary information. It turns out that the bully leader's father is wealthy and generously donates money to the school, forcing the teachers to turn a blind eye to his son's atrocities. The company director, Sun Chol, gives the go-ahead to his team. The driver, Do-gi, activates the meter and heads to a restaurant. There, he begins the next phase of the operation by deliberately taking someone else's food and spiking it with something. It turns out the food belongs to a teacher. Do-gi apologizes and returns the plate to the man. The teacher suffers from food poisoning due to the spiked food and has to miss school for a while. Do-gi gets a job at the same school as a substitute teacher. Naturally, Sun immediately disrupts the class. During recess, the other 2 bullies, Han-sik and Ksu, throw empty cans at Do-gi while their leader mocks the teacher, who dares not stand up to them. Seeing that the new teacher is just a meek and quiet person, Sun brazenly snatches his wallet and runs away. Do-gi feels deeply wronged, while Go-in, listening to everything through a hidden microphone, smiles at the fact that his colleague was robbed by his own students. Later, the bullies ask an old lady to buy cigarettes for them since they are underage. The granny obliges, but instead of giving her the promised reward, the bullies leave her with their leftover noodles and walk away. In the evening, after taking money from their classmates, the bullies party in a club while Go watches them through a hidden camera in a pen he cleverly planted. Soon, real gangsters appear, to whom the bullies give part of the money taken from other students. It turns out that the gangsters protect the bullies, which is why they fear no one and keep the whole school in terror. The next day, the bullies corner a nerd in the restroom, but Do-gi shows up in time and prevents them from bullying the kid, taking him away. The bullies don't like the new teacher's behavior and decide to teach him a good lesson. The next day, they buy a carton of cigarettes from an old man on the street who sells not legally. Then Shu lies to the teacher that someone is waiting for him in the library. When Doji leaves, the guy puts explicit pictures and dirty magazines in his bag. Meanwhile, Song-hae threatens his classmate to help him and frame the new teacher. Dougie leaves the school library without waiting for anyone. At that moment, a disfigured classmate with a torn blouse appears next to him and starts screaming loudly, accusing Dogi of having explicit photos of her in his bag. The teacher calls the headmaster, who gathers all the participants in the incident in the classroom to deal with the situation. Only there is nothing in Dogi's bag, and the principal finds the explicit photos of the girl right in the bag of the leader of the bullies. A classmate with a torn blouse immediately refuses to retract her words and claims that a huge cockroach crawled under her clothes, because of which she screamed so loudly. It turns out that Goen was watching everything that was going on through a hidden camera in her pen. The girl infiltrated the school disguised as a teacher and managed to transfer explicit pictures and dirty magazine from Dogi's bag to Sonhee's backpack. The disgraced bully leader blames the incident on his friend and beats him severely. On the street, the hooligans see the police arresting an old man who was illegally selling cigarettes. It turns out that the old man was selling cigarettes with magic weed inside, and he even admits to the cops that his customers were the bullies, who barely managed to get away unnoticed. The frightened high school students decide to bury the dangerous cigarettes in the woods. The next day, Soon-hee tells the whole class that anyone who talks to the teacher will be punched in the face, possibly even kicked. When Dogi enters the classroom and speaks to the students, no one answers him, and the man immediately realizes that it's the hooligans playing their dirty games. Then Dogi briefly declares that today they will watch a movie and turns on a video of the bullies burying drugged cigarettes in the woods. But a little later, he smilingly states that he accidentally turned on the wrong video. Shocked hooligans after class ask Dogi about the video, and he replies that he was taking pictures of beautiful scenery but accidentally filmed his students in the forest. At that, the teacher smiles again, promising not to reveal the boy's secret to anyone. The bullies try to dig up the dangerous cigarettes, but find nothing there. A little later, Dogi declares that as a responsible citizen, he has handed over the magic weed to the police. He adds that he didn't give up. Song-hae feels that the teacher is bullying them, but he can't do anything about it. The next day, Dogi even asks the bully to bring him food, again insinuating that he has magic weed and the police. Song-hae has to comply, and the teacher smilingly suggests that he keep the change, which further inflames the teenager's anger. The bullies are horrified to learn from the internet that they can go to jail for 5 years for weed, after which Song-hae calls the teacher and threatens to eliminate him. But when Song-hae returns home, he is surprised to see Dogi playing cards with his father. The teacher then breaks into the bully's room and demands that the trio bring him money, threatening otherwise to turn them in to the cops. As soon as Dogi leaves, Sani calls someone and asks for help. A little later, Dogi finds Chunmin and tells him that it is time for him to go back to school. The high school student is scared and still has doubts, but the teacher convinces him that everything will be fine. The next day, Dogi meets on the roof of the house with hooligans, but they bring with them a whole group of scumbags. Guys raid the ark going to tear him to pieces, but the man turns out to be a great fighter, and one by one he takes out all the opponents. The leader of the guys is also knocked out, and then the teacher turns his attention to the trinity of hooligans, and Sony runs to the edge of the roof and shakes helplessly. Dogi approaches the hooligan, and without any hesitation, kicks him off the roof. The remaining villains cry and beg the man to spare them. From fear, they even put on pants. Dogi tells the hooligans to stop their atrocities. They run to the police and confess to all their crimes so that the doggy does not get to them. Suddenly, Song-hae comes to his senses in the bakery. It turns out that Dogi's co-workers had managed to inflate a large inflatable pillow on which the bully had fallen and then dragged him here. Dogi explains that he works for Sungmin, but he'll have to pay for the work he's done. He'll have to work at that bakery for a few months. If the bully tries to escape, this time there will be no mercy. Then, Dogi meets with Chungmin again in a taxi and tells him that Sun will pay off most of his debt for the completed work. Moreover, The mysterious organization is willing to pay for his college if he agrees to work for them, and Dogi promises to look out for him so that from now on, the high schooler will be fine. A few weeks later, Maria, in tears, stands on the edge of a bridge, ready to take a step into the abyss. Unexpectedly, she sees an advertisement for an elite taxi with the slogan, "Don't die, get revenge." Soon after a phone call, Dogi arrives to pick her up. The driver says they are going to get revenge, and Maria shares her story in detail along the way. It turns out Maria is an orphan with mental disabilities. She is 18 years old, but has the developmental level of a second grader. Despite this, it is quite possible to find work for someone with her condition. When it's time to leave the orphanage, she says goodbye to her friends, who give her a nice souvenir as a keepsake. Soon, a social worker takes her from the orphanage and informs her of a suitable job. She will be working at a factory performing simple computer operations. When she arrives, Maria signs a contract without reading it. Initially, everything goes well, and even the manager, John, is very polite and welcoming. Maria shares with him how well she understands Excel. After the meeting, the social worker leaves, and John shows Maria around the facility, stating that she will first need to clean fish for a few days. Maria is surprised, thinking she was supposed to work on a computer, and refuses to go near the fish, which she fears, and whose smell makes her nauseous. Soon, the factory owner, Chu-chan, arrives. Hearing that Maria is not willing to clean fish, he grabs her by the hair and dunks her into a tub of fish. The fat man then brutally beats her without stopping. The ruthless employers put Maria in a barrel of icy water and cover it with a lid. After some time, Maria is tormented for weeks. One night, Maria tries to escape and even succeeds. On her way, she meets a policeman and asks for help. The policeman turns out to be thoroughly corrupt and takes her back to Chan's factory, where she is subjected to harsh torture again. The policeman also mistreats her. Dogi gathers information about the new target and informs the team that Chan is known in society as a respectable businessman who sells fish wholesale. The fat man has not been caught by the police because a corrupt cop, Kim, covers for him. The team pretends to be food delivery workers and delivers fried chicken laced with sleeping pills to the factory. When the owner and manager fall asleep, Dogi easily infiltrates the facility. He breaks into the owner's safe but finds nothing and is horrified to see photos of Maria being tortured on the phone. The next day, Dogi, posing as a buyer, arrives at the factory with a bag full of cash and says he needs 50 barrels of fish. Sensing easy money, Chu promises to deliver the required amount of seafood in 2 days, provided the client makes an advance payment. When Dogi leaves, the owner is disappointed to find that half of the fish barrels are infested with maggots. He plans to distribute the rotten fish to schools and kindergartens. The team overhears this conversation through a secretly installed microphone and understands the scale of the black businessman's deception. Later, John talks to the social worker Chung-sok about Maria. It turns out the social worker supplies him with mentally disabled workers for 15% of the profits. There is no way out for Chung-sok. If a worker dies, the villains don't lose out, because they insure the workers' lives and health for large sums in an insurance company where NSO works part-time. After some time, most of the workers accidentally suffer fatal accidents. The team overhears this conversation too. Sun Cho comes to Chung Sok's office, pretending to be interested in insurance. After their conversation, Sun offers to drive the social worker home, but knocks her out with a stun gun and heads to the factory. John tries to bring the missing fish barrels from the port to the factory, but Dogi, wearing a mask, attacks him on the way and beats him up, taking all the cargo. Dogi calls Chu and tells him that if they don't deliver the entire batch of 50 barrels on time, they will face a hefty fine. Chu anxiously calls the corrupt cop Kim to find out if he has found Maria. At that moment, Dogi catches up with the policeman on the road, causing his car to flip in the air and crash. Dogi takes the corrupt cop's dash cam and disappears. Meanwhile, Sun Cho agrees to take Maria into their team for a simple job. When John finally attempts to deliver the missing fish barrels to the factory after several failed attempts, Doggy attacks him again. This time, the villain is accompanied by several thugs. The guys attack Doggy, but he easily takes down the entire gang and brutally beats John, tying him to a post. Worried, Chu cannot find peace as he lacks enough fish for the client's order, and the manager stops answering his calls. When Chu arrives at the factory, he is surprised to see a masked stranger who boldly declares that he is confiscating all the fish from the businessman. The owner angrily attacks the thief, but Doggy in the mask easily dodges his blows. Tired of playing with the fat man, Doggy removes his mask, and Chu's jaw drops in shock. Chu tries to eliminate the deceitful client, but Doggy knocks him out with a couple of powerful punches. The Avenger then forces Chu to eat his rotten fish and locks him in a barrel. After that, no one ever saw the deceitful owner and manager of the factory again. The Avenger team sells a few barrels of fish to cover their expenses, and the factory itself and the profits from its activities are transferred to the orphanage for people with disabilities who were victims of the former cruel owners.